Hello and welcome to another edition of the TES Secondary Maths Resource of the Week with me, Craig Barton. Now, for many years, I have been absolutely convinced that a sound knowledge of pupils' misconceptions is one of the keys to successful teaching and successful planning of lessons. And I always go back to this story. I remember my very first lesson as a teacher flipping out 14 years ago now. I walked into a year 8 class, adding fractions, and I thought somebody had set me up. The mistakes some of these kids were making, the misconceptions they'd had, I was like, are you winding me up? And the reason I couldn't predict those or anticipate those misconceptions is because I'd never made them myself. And I was an inexperienced teacher, and I didn't have those years of experience and those years of noticing and noting down and experiencing the mistakes and misconceptions that our students have. And now, 14 years in, I'm by no means an expert, but at least I'm starting to build up a bank of knowledge and experience of the kind of mistakes that students make. And here's the key thing. If you can know that and anticipate the kind of mistakes and misconceptions students will have before you go into a lesson, then it enables you to do what Doug Lemov calls, in Teach Like a Champion, plan for error. And it just means that your thinking can be done before the lesson in terms of preparing an explanation or some resources to help confront and resolve the misconception, instead of doing what I've done tons of times, and that's being caught in the middle of a lesson. You've got 30 expectant faces looking up at you. A child has made a mistake and you're trying to diagnose on the spot what's that mistake. Then you're trying to figure out on the spot how can I help resolve it, and so on. I'd much rather do my thinking before the lesson than in the heat of the battle. So that was a long preamble to say, whenever I see a resource that is targeted on misconceptions, I flipping love it. And this is one of the best I've ever seen. What went wrong? It's being uploaded by Boothie380, and it consists of a single Word document, and it looks like this. Now, the first thing that you may notice, the eagle-eyed amongst you, is this is year 6. This has been another trend that I've tried to bring into Resource of the Week this particular academic year, and that's to make more use of primary school resources, in particular Key Stage 2 resources, because there's a massive crossover between years 7, 8 and 9, and even 10 and 11 sometimes with the work that's done in primary, and there's some flipping amazing primary resources uploaded to TES Maths, and this is one of the best I've ever seen. So it's a collection of, let me get the number right, 90 what went wrong questions. And what went wrong is essentially a way of addressing key misconceptions. So I'll show you this one. I like this one here straight away. Eve is counting backwards in 10. She says 38, 28, 18, 8, minus 8. What went wrong? Now we can see there that the zero's missed out. Now I'll talk about 2 different ways to use these in a second, but I just want to give you a couple more to give you a flavour. There's another one I really liked here. I like that one. Shireen is doing 17 minus 2 times 3, and she says the answer is minus 11. What went wrong? What's she done there? And that one there, another bid maths related one there. Then we get one with a prime number. Erin says the lowest prime number is 1. What went wrong? I really like this simplification of fractions one. Where is it? There it is. I like that one there. Rebecca, she's involved here. Simplifies 4/9 to 2 over 4.5. What went wrong? And there's loads of these, all beautifully organised into different subject areas. Perimeter error and volume, decimals. I like that as well. 0.46 is the same as 46 over 10. What went wrong? Percentages, introducing algebra, converting units, ratio properties of shapes, and so on. In fact, flipping out, there's 94. A little 4 bonus ones at the end there. So, how can we best make use of this? Well, for me, there are 2 ways. The first I alluded to in my introduction. It enables us to plan for error. So if I'm teaching properties of shapes or introducing ratio, I'm going to have a look at this document and think, all right, actually, there's 4 common mistakes my students are possibly likely to make. So if I encounter one of these mistakes, well, first I've got to decide how am I going to uncover it. And for me, that's where formative assessment comes into play, whether it's diagnostic questions or however you want to do it. How am I going to uncover it? Am I going to be ready for it? How am I going to help the student who's got that misconception? Now, that help might be an explanation, or it might be a resource, or it might be just stay back at the end, we'll have a talk through it. But again, I'd much rather do my thinking before the lesson than in the lesson. So here, it just arms me with so much information and knowledge about the mistakes my students are likely to make. So that's one way to use it, as a planning aid. And I think that's a massive just benefit and bonus of this resource. But the other way is as a teaching tool as well. So if you've taught ratio and you've gone through the end of the topic unit, then it's a really, really nice idea to give students one of these, bang it up on the board, put it out on a little worksheet or something like that, and say Cristiano's increasing our equilateral triangle scale factor 4. The sides are currently 2.2. In the new triangle, the sides are 6.2. What went wrong? So just to bang that up on the board and say to kids, see if you can explain the mistake. Can you understand the mistake? And can you resolve the mistake? What advice would you give to Cristiano? So we're flipping it on its head. We make these misconceptions a really positive thing. We make these a learning tool. Now, one word of warning. I'm a little bit obsessed with misconceptions. And one thing that comes through from the research for me is that there is a danger that if you expose students to misconceptions too early on when their knowledge is relatively insecure, then there's a danger that they're as likely to remember the wrong way of doing something as the right way of doing something. So take this for example. I will make sure that I only presented this at the end of a topic unit where I had taught students the correct way to enlarge things by scale factor 4, emphasising it's a multiplicative relationship, not an additive relationship. I certainly wouldn't come in with this straight away because how on earth are students supposed to know what a scale factor 4 means? So I'm a great believer in teach them the right way, give them plenty of practice the right way, leave a gap, then expose them to a misconception. It assesses understanding, it develops their ability to form arguments, to communicate effectively, and so on. So 2 ways of using this resource, a planning tool and a teaching tool. But I just think what a beautiful, beautiful resource this is. I think it's absolutely lovely stuff. So I'll be making great use of this. If you like this resource and you find it useful, hop back onto the resource page here. Leave a rating, leave your comments to thank the author, and I shall return with a fresh resource of the week next week. Take care of yourselves. Bye for now.